This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, welcome to episode 5 of A Geek Leader. And today we're going to be doing a little book review. I think reading is important to keep yourself current, to advance your knowledge, your skill set. And I actually use audiobooks to get me ahead of things because I found that reading just takes longer, and I've got all this free time in the car while I'm traveling to and from work, or to pick up the kids from daycare, or taking a road trip somewhere. And also I listen to audiobooks when I walk the dogs or go for a run, and even sometime when I'm in the shower. But it's a really good way to multitask, right? It makes me feel good, makes me feel like I'm actually accomplishing something more than just looking around while I'm walking the dogs. I can actually be learning something, developing my business skills, my leadership skills, getting somebody else's perspective on certain topics. It's just a great thing to do to help you maximize your time. So one of the audiobooks that I listened to, I guess it's been about a year ago now, was Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last. And I really like this book, and I've actually listened to parts of it again. I usually don't listen to the whole book more than once. Sometimes I do if it's a really powerful book, but most of the time I listen to a book once, and then I may listen to certain sections of it again and again. But there was several key points that I really liked about this book that I kind of want to talk about today. And one of the things that I really liked about it was the way the book starts. So it starts with this story of Johnny Bravo. And that was the name of this guy. He was in the military. He was a pilot. And the story that Simon Sinek tells is that there's these troops, these ground troops that were taking on fire. And Johnny Bravo, flew down through the night sky and gave them ground cover. But he had to pull up when he got really close to these cliffs so he didn't crash right into them. And he did that over and over and over again until he ran out of ammo. And he had a wingman who was kind of nervous. He's never done anything like this. He told his wingman, hey, just stay right behind me. When I pull up, you pull up. You provide ground fire because I'm out of ammo. And the wingman just followed his lead and went over again and provided ground fire cover for these guys that were out on the ground. These infantry soldiers. And at the end of the day, no one died. Everyone was safe. And what he was trying to illustrate is that leaders are people that would do this, for the ones next to him. And when he asked Johnny Bravo, why would you risk your life to save these people that you really don't even know? And his answer was, well, they would do it for me. And the idea behind that was that there's this circle of safety. And the whole purpose of maintaining this circle of safety is so that we can invest our time and energy to guard against the dangers outside. And that's what Simon Sinek uses that quote within the book. And it's just fantastic because he's telling us that if we feel comfortable and we're safe and we realize that others will protect us, then we're willing to step kind of outside of our comfort zone sometimes without fear of being shot down, without fear of rejection. So he, like Simon Sinek always does, the way he did with his other book, Start With Wine, which I'll probably do an episode on that later on. I'll have to reread that or listen to that one again because it's been a couple of years since I've listened to that one. But what he talks about is he breaks down the biology of leadership, right? He doesn't just talk about how, the psychology of this and that. He talks more about the actual chemicals in your brain and how they make us feel, how they affect your body, your mind, your mental state. And he talks about 4 happy chemicals, as he calls them, endorphins. Endorphins, they're the chemicals that help us, when we're going through a hard time, while we're running. I'm a runner. I like to run. And one of the things that helps us run, or while we're running, we run, let's say 5-6 miles. And during that time, we feel good. And as soon as we finish, we start drinking that water. We're calming down. We feel great. And that's what we call runner's high, right? And that's the endorphins in your body. They're masking the pain of the muscles that you're just tore, that you exercised. The other chemical he talks about is dopamine, and dopamine is that rush, that good feeling that you get when you get to check something off your to-do list. And I guess you guys are probably like me, where you have a to-do list, you go out there, you check things off your to-do list, you feel good about it, and then every now and then you'll do something that's not on your to-do list. And if you're like me, what you do is you write it on the to-do list and then check it off. And you do that because you want that dopamine rush. It feels good, right? So dopamine is that thing that makes us feel good. And he gave us the example of if you were a hunter in the hunter and gatherer days and you went out and you killed something, you felt good, right? And the idea behind it is that you would feel good and want to go again because you accomplished something. even before you needed food, because if you waited until you were hungry and you needed food, it would be difficult to find it because sometimes it takes long. And the next chemical we talked about was serotonin. And the thing about endorphins and dopamine, let me step back to that real quick, is that those you can produce on your own, right? But serotonin requires others, and that's that feeling of pride that you get when you accomplish something. And the cool thing about serotonin that he talked about was, like if I graduate college, then I would feel good about it. But not only that, anybody that supported me would also feel good about it. It would help benefit them as well. And that was kind of the idea behind serotonin, is this social chemical that, transcends just one person. The other people around you that helped you through this, that you feel responsible, you pass on that good feeling to them as well. And the other one was oxytocin. And oxytocin is this chemical that helps us, and it helps provide generosity. When we do something for other people, we feel oxytocin. We feel good about it. And the cool thing, he talked about that. He told a story of how he did something good for someone on the street. He picked up a piece of paper or something that they dropped, and he got across the street, and the guy on the other side said, "Hey man, I saw what you did. That was really cool." And the idea behind that is that the oxytocin transferred to people that saw the goodwill, not just the people you did the good for, but anybody that witnessed that. And the cool thing about oxytocin that I gathered from this book was that it not only makes you feel good and it helps you out when you do something and it's transferable to other people, but it's also an addiction inhibitor. All right. So the bad thing about dopamine, one of the first chemicals I talked about, was that it can be highly addictive. And just like anybody who's had a problem with gambling, you can get very addictive and do really bad things. With dopamine, it's the same thing. And we've all heard of stories of, people that had a goal to reach and they did anything to get to that goal. And part of that could be the dopamine addiction that they have, and they're willing to do whatever to get that next hit of dopamine. Well, oxytocin and the generosity that you get from that inhibits the addiction to dopamine, which is a pretty cool little thing. The next thing that he talks about when he's going through these chemicals is one more chemical, and it's the stress chemical, cortisol. And he tells a story of how with stress, if you're in an office environment and someone senses that something bad's going to happen, maybe there's going to be a layoff, maybe we're having a bad quarter or something like that, you have this feeling of stress, and it's transferable. The people around you say, "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but Jimmy over there is really stressed out," and they get stressed, right? And it spreads. And the thing about cortisol is that cortisol heightens your senses, right? So if you're laying in bed at night and you hear this bump in the night, you wake up, you go, "Oh, what was that?" And what do? The person behind you wakes up, and what do? "What? What was that?" You look around, maybe you get the baseball bat, you go downstairs, you find nothing's wrong, your heart level goes back down, you calm down, you go back to bed, right? Because cortisol is only meant to stay in our body for a short period of time, but what it does is it heightens your senses. It makes you hyper aware of the situation around you. But in order to do that, it has to take away from other areas. It weakens your immune system. It pulls energy away from the immune system to send it to your senses. It inhibits growth. And one of the things he tells in your stories, he gives all these statistics and examples of how high-stress environments and high-stress jobs are killing people. Right, so I think that's really important. And he says that you can't manipulate people with fear, but you need to inspire them. And I think that was very powerful. As leaders, we need to inspire our teams. We can't just manipulate them. And using fear doesn't work. As the examples that I've given before in talks is that when you try to motivate with fear, you don't get the reaction that you're looking for. You get people that become self-aware, self-preservation. They want to care about themselves. They want to preserve themselves, and they care less about the team. They're more concerned about making sure that I have a job, not worried about the company in general or the team, right? But if you have this circle of safety, this idea that we all care about each other and we're going to have each other's back no matter what, then the whole group benefits. Instead of one person just looking out for themselves and maybe throwing this other guy under the bus. If you have a whole team environment that cares for one another and they're not manipulated by fear, but instead inspired to do great things, then you can come a lot further along as a team. And that's why some teams pull together and others don't, right? Because of this idea of this circle of safety. Right? So I got all that out of the book, Leaders Eat Last. It's a fantastic book. If you want to learn more about that, I also have a link to a video of that Simon Sinek gave in one of his talks It's going to be in the show notes at ageekleader.com, episode 5. You can check it out there. And I hope you really enjoyed the show, and we'll do some more book reviews as we go along. All right. Thanks a lot. All right, guys. That was my book review of Leaders Eat Last. I hope you enjoyed it. And this episode is brought to you by What's HTML? That's an audiobook and a paperback book that I wrote a couple of years ago about HTML, HTML5, and CSS. It's kind of like the 80-20 rule of how to learn HTML. You can get that at Amazon. It's also an audio form on iTunes or at Audible, and I'll link that up also in the show notes. But I hope you guys check it out. Every now and then I do some promotions where I'll give it away free on Kindle, but there's also a paperback version that you can get at Amazon. I hope you like that. You can check it out at whatshtml.com.